Hello, welcome to Postcolonial Space. I'm Masood Raja, and today I'll briefly try to answer a question that someone had posed through a comment on my video about Giorgio Agamben's discussion of Zoe and Bios. And the question was whether or not they could use these two concepts to study the Israel-Palestine conflict or relationships between Israelis and Palestinians. And their conclusion was that maybe they couldn't. And they asked for my opinion on it, and my response was that you don't need my opinion on it. Just do a research, do a little bit of search on the conflict would tell you what has already been produced on this. It is probably one of the most written about conflictual regions in the world, okay? And from all sides, from right, left, and center. But to, offer a tentative answer, you just have to go read Agamben and Roberto Esposito and then figure out deep down what is it that they mean by Bios and Zoe. Of course, these are Greek concepts. So simply on a simplest level, Zoe is all life, plant, animal, anything that is living is life. So that means each one of us is part of Zoe. Bios is qualified life. This is the life that has rights, that has power, right? That is probably considered more valuable than Zoe. So in any power or conflictual situation, the dominant group tries to reduce the other to the level of bare life, Zoe. Because if you can do that, then you can logically suggest to yourself and your group that it's okay to treat this group a certain way. So if you keep these bare essentials in mind, then if you look at the Palestinian-Israeli situation, you can make up your own mind, right? Are there any laws that reduce Palestinians, even when they are citizens of Israel, to a certain different kind of humanity, a different kind of existence? You can write about that. And this doesn't just apply to Israel-Palestine conflict. In any society, you can apply these concepts and read a society by seeing who are the ones who are considered fully realized humans with rights and powers, and who are the ones who are reduced to a level of silence, a level of subjecthood, which doesn't enjoy the full rights of a public life. Now remember, in the Greek classics, a fully realized human subject or a citizen was only the person who had a public life, who could participate in the politics. Anyone else, women, slaves, everyone else was excluded from the Greek polis. So the only time I had used these concepts was in discussing in one of the Pakistani journals the uncritical adoption of any kind of religious laws to define women's role in the society. And my conclusion was that if we went by the way Taliban and others interpret it, then women would be reduced to bare life, to Zoe, because they will have no political power, or they will not have access to public sphere. So an uncritical adoption of that kind of ideology would then reduce over 51% of Pakistan's population to the level of Zoe, to the level of bare life, people with no public role. So if you go by that, if I could bend these concepts and their discussion by Agamben and Roberto Esposito to that specific use, then obviously you can also apply it to any situation, but especially Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But you cannot just watch a couple of videos and then use the concepts, right? That has been my point throughout on this channel, that these are just introductions. These are not sustained discussions or debates on philosophical or theoretical concepts. The only way you will be able to do justice to that subject, that topic, is by reading Agamben, Homo Sacer, and his other works, The State of Exception, by reading Roberto Esposito, right? Bios is his book. And then by reading other books, people who might have critiqued Agamben and Esposito, and then you will reach a level of understanding where you can say, okay, here is my understanding of these two concepts mediated through these debates, and I will now take these concepts and study the Israel-Palestine conflict and see whether it applies or not. Of course, it goes without saying that you will then have to study the conflict itself, its history, what are the major works that deal with it, right? And understand how people have tried to explain the concept or the conflict, right? And I'd given some suggestions to you who had posed this question. I think James Galvin's book on the Israel-Palestine conflict is one of the most comprehensive books. I highly recommend it. I'll post the link in the description. And if you want to learn the history of the Palestinian people, Said's book, The Question of Palestine, should be very helpful to you. That's it. Thank you so much. And as always, peace and love.